So, part two of the Rancher's Wild Secret. Okay. Because Holden had just walked in wearing a tux, it might just take a moment for her brain to link all those details up, but it had now. She couldn't just figure out what it meant, that he looked like this, that he was here. He took a glass of champagne from the tray and he scanned the room. He looked different, but also the same. Because he might be clothed in extremely refined fashion, there was a ruggedness about him, something wild and untamed, although even on a surface level he blended in with people around them. No, not blended in. He could never blend in. He was actually dressed much nicer than anyone else. That suit was clearly custom and it looked horrendously expensive, and so did his shoes, as did everything about him, and he could really be the same man she had happened upon shirtless cutting wood the other day, the same man who'd been with her in the little cabin, the same man who had said those things to her in the cabin. And I'm being nice, cleaning it up a little bit. Sorry, Maisey, but if kids watch, I want them to. And then his eyes collided with hers, and he smiled. It made her shiver, it made her ache, but even so it was a stranger smile. It was not of the man she knew, and she couldn't make sense of that certain, even to her honesty. He walked across the room, acknowledging no one except her. She froze, like a deer being stalked by a mountain lion. Her heart was pounding in her ears, the sound now louder than the din of a chatter going on around her. "Just the woman I was looking for," he said. Why did he sound different? He had been confident in their every interaction, had never seemed remotely cowed by her position or by her money, and maybe that was the real thing she was seeing now. Not a different man, but one who looked in his element rather than out of it. "What are you doing here? And where did you get that suit?" "Would you believe my fairy godmother visited?" The dark humor twisted his lips into a wry smile. "No," she said, her heart pounding more viciously in her temple. "Then would you believe that a few of the mice that live in the cabin made the suit for me?" "Even less likely to believe that. You don't seem like a friend of mine." "Mice, sorry." "Honey, I'm not really a friend of anyone. And I'm really sorry for what I'm about to do, but if you cooperate with me, things are going to go a whole lot better." She looked around as if someone other than him might have had the answers. Of course, no one offered any if they did. "What do you mean?" "You see, I haven't been completely honest with you." "What?" She couldn't make any sense of this. She looked around the room to see if there was any attracting attention, because surely there must be, because she felt like what was happening between them was shining bright like a beacon on a hill, but somehow they weren't attracting any attention at all. "Why don't we go outside? I have a meeting with your father in just a few minutes, unless you're willing to negotiate with me." "You have a meeting with my father? Negotiate what?" The thoughts that rolled through her mind sent her into a panic. He obviously filmed what had happened between them. He was going to extort money from her for her family. He was a con man. No wonder he didn't want his picture taken. All those accusations hovered on the edge of her lips, but she couldn't make them, not here. "What do you want?" she asked. He said nothing. The man was a rock in a suit, no more sophisticated than he had been in jeans. She thought he was different, but he wasn't. This was the real man, and he was harder, darker than the man she imagined he'd been. Funny how dressing up made that clear. "What do you want?" she asked again. She refused to move. She felt like the biggest fool on the planet. How she trusted this man with her body. How he was so clearly not who he said he was. Of course he hadn't actually wanted her. Of course the only man she wanted was actually just playing a game. "Revenge," he said. "Nothing more, and I'm sorry that you're caught in the middle of it." "Did you film us?" She looked around, trying to see if people had noticed him yet. They still hadn't. "Did you film us together?" "No," he said. "I'm not posting anything up on the internet, least of all that." "Are you going to show my father?" "No," he said, his lip curling. "This isn't about you, Emerson. Whether you believe me or not, it isn't. But what I'm about to do next is about you. So I need you to come outside with me." He turned without waiting to see if she was with him and walked back out to the barn. Emerson looked around and then darted after his retreating figure. When they reached the outdoors, it was dim out, the first night they had met, when he turned his back to face her, and she had the most ridiculous flashback. He had been there in jeans with that cowboy hat on, and here he now was in a tux, but it was the moment that brought the reality of the situation into focus. This man, that same man she'd been seduced by, or she seduced him, it didn't even make sense anymore. "Tell me what's going on." She looked him up and down. "You clearly aren't a ranch hand." Your father did hire me legitimately, so I guess in all total honesty I do work for your father, and I am a ranch hand. What else are you? Are you paparazzi? He looked appalled by that. I am not a bottom feeder that makes his living on the misfortunes of others. Then what are you, and why are you here? I came here to destroy the winery. She drew back. The venom in his voice was so intense that she could feel the poisoning sinking down beneath her skin. He looked her up and down. But whether you like it or not, or it's up to you. What the hell are you talking about? Your father had an affair with my sister. Your sister? I don't. My father did not have an affair. My father and mother have been married for more than 30 years, and your sister would have to be. She's younger than you, Holden said. Younger than you, and incredibly naive about the ways of the world, and your father took advantage of her. When she got pregnant, he tried to pay her off to get an abortion, and when she wouldn't, he left. She miscarried, and she's had nothing but health problems since. She attempted suicide twice and has been hospitalized. Your father ruined her, absolutely ruined her. No, Emerson said, it was a mistake. My father would never do that. He would never hurt her. I'm not here to argue semantics with you. You can either come with me, and I'm about to have that meeting with your father, though he doesn't know why. He'll tell you the whole story. What does this have to do with me? It didn't have anything to do with you. Until you came to the cabin the other day, I was happy to leave you alone, but you pursued it. And then you told me something very interesting about the winery and who would own it. Emerson felt like she might pass out. The man I marry. Exactly. He looked at her. Those dark eyes were blazing. So you have two choices, really. Let me have that meeting with your father, and you're welcome to attend, where I'll be explaining to him how I found the stacks of NDAs in his employee files, and it doesn't take a genius to figure out why. What? Your father has engaged in many affairs with workers here on the property. Once I get a hold of the paperwork in his office, I get in touch with some of the women. Most of them wouldn't talk, but enough did. Coercion. And so much of that money for your vineyard comes through all your celebrity endorsements. Can you imagine the commercial fallout if your father is to be found yet another man who abuses his power, manipulates women into bed? I don't believe you. It doesn't matter whether you believe me or not, Emerson. What matters is that I know I can make other people believe me, and when this is over, you won't be able to give Maxfield wines away with a car wash. I don't understand what that gives you, she said, horror coursing through her veins. She couldn't even entertain the idea of being true, but the truth of it wasn't the thing now. The issue was what he could do. Revenge, he said. His voice was low and hard. Revenge isn't a very lucrative business. I don't need revenge to pay, but I won't lie to you. I find the idea of revenge and a payout very compelling. The idea of owning a piece of this place instead of simply destroying it. So tell me, how does it work? Your husband getting a stake in the business. I get married, and then I just call the lawyers, and they'll do the legal paperwork. His expression became decisive. Then you and I are getting married. And if I don't? I'll publicize the story. I will make sure to ruin the brand. However, if I marry you, what I'll have is ownership of the brand, and you and I, with our united stakes, will have a hell of a lot more decision-making power. But to what end? I want your father to know that I ended up owning part of his, and what I do after that will depend on what he's willing to do. But I want to make sure that he has to contend with me for as long as I want. Yes, I could ruin the label, but that would destroy everything that you and your sisters have worked so hard for. And I'm not necessarily here to hurt you, but gaining a piece of this, making sure my sister gets something, making sure your father knows that I'm right here, that has value to me. What about Donovan? He's not my problem, but it's your call, Emerson. You can marry Donovan and inherit that smoldering wreckage that I leave behind, or you can marry me. How do I know that you're telling the truth? Look up Sonia Jane on your favorite social media site. I know who she is. She's has millions of followers. I know, he said. She's your sister? Yes, and? My name is Holden McCall. I'm not famous on the internet or really anywhere, but I'm one of the wealthiest developers in the state. With my money, my sister gained some connections, got into modeling, and started traveling. She's built an online empire, Emerson said. I know, he said. What she's done is nothing short of incredible, but she lost herself. Your father devastated her, destroyed her, and I can't let that stand. So if I don't marry you, you destroy everything, and the reason for me marrying Donovan doesn't even exist anymore? That's about the size of it. and we have to transfer everything before my father realizes what you're doing." Emerson had no idea what to do, no idea what to think. Holden could be lying to her about all of this, but if he wasn't, then he was going to destroy the winery, and there was really no way for her to be sure about which one was true until it was too late. "Well, what do we do then?" "I told you that's all up to you." "Okay, so say we get married, then what?" "You were already prepared to marry a man you didn't love. Might as well be me." Except this was worse than marrying a man she didn't love. She had trusted Holden with something deep and real, some part of her that she'd never shown to anyone else, and she'd trusted him enough to let him be with her and be with her. And now she had to make the decision about marrying him on the heels of discovering that she didn't know him at all. "I'll marry you," she said. "I'll marry you." Okay, page 290. I just got to find where I marked it. I guess I should start over here, 289. The roar of victory in Holden's blood hadn't quieted, not even by the time they boarded his private plane. They left the party, and now they were taking off for the regional airport bound for Las Vegas, and he was amused by the fact that they both just so happened to be dressed for a wedding, though they hadn't planned it. 24-hour wedding chapels and no waiting period, he said, lifting a glass of champagne and then extended his hand and offering it to her. The plane was small but nicely appointed and fairly quiet. He wasn't extraordinarily attached to a great many of creature comforts that had come with his wealth, but being able to go where he wanted, when he wanted, and without a plane full of people was certainly his favorite. "You have your own plane," she said, taking a glass of champagne and downing it quickly. "You are private plane rich?" She didn't look impressed, just so much as ticked. "Yep," he said. She shook her head incredulously. I don't even know what to say to that." "I didn't ask you to say anything." "No, you just asked me to marry you." "I believe I demanded you to marry me, or I would ruin your family." "My mistake," she said, her tone acerbic. "How could I be so silly? You may not believe me, but what I told you, I didn't intend to involve you in this. I just conveniently involved myself." "If it helps, I found it an inconvenience at first." "Why? You felt guilty? In the middle of your quest to be taken down by my family and our fortune? Yes, that must have been such an inconvenience for you." "I didn't want to drag into it," he said, "because I'm not your father, and I sure as hell wasn't going to extract revenge by using you for Boom Boom. The Boom Boom was separate. I only realized the possibilities when you told me about how your husband would be given an ownership stake in the vineyard." "Right," she said, "of course, because I was an idiot who thought that since you had been with me I could maybe have a casual conversation with you. I'm sorry, but the information was just too good for me to let go, and in the end your family gets off easy. Except that you might do something drastic and destroy the winery with the control of your share. I was absolutely going to do that, but now I can own a piece of it instead, and that benefits me. I also have his daughter right here with me." "Oh, so you're going to hold a gun to my head for the dramatics?" "No gun," he said. "In fact, we're on a private plane and you're drinking champagne. You're not in any danger from me, and I didn't force you to come with me." "But you did," she said in her voice so thick. "I offered you two choices. I didn't like either of them." "Welcome to life, Princess. Your not liking your options isn't the same as you not having any." She ignored that statement. "This is not my life." "It is now." He appraised her for a long moment, the elegant line of her profile. She was staring out the window, doing her very best not to look at him, the big bad wolf. She was always going to try and eat you. You know how that fairy tale goes. Say whatever you... The big bad wolf was always going to try and eat you. Sorry, got that wrong. "Say whatever you need to say to make yourself feel better," she said. "You're not a wolf. You're just a jackass." "And your father?" That seemed to kill her desire to banter with him. "I don't know if I believe you. But you believe me enough to be on a plane if we're going to Vegas to get married. Because I'm right, if I'm telling the truth. It ruins everything, and I don't think I trust anyone quite so much that I would take that chance, not even my father. I don't even trust you at all, but what other choice do I have? Because if you're right, I was willing to marry a man that I didn't love to support my family, to support the empire, the dynasty, so why the hell wouldn't I do it now?" "Oh, but you hate me, don't you?" "I do, I really do," she said. He could sense that there was more than she wanted to say, but she couldn't, and they were silent for the next hour until the plane touched down in Nevada. "Did you want an Elvis impersonator?" he asked. When they arrived on the Strip, a little while at the little white wedding chapel was reserved before they landed. "And me without my phone?" she said. "Did you want to take pictures and post them?" She narrowed her eyes. I wanted to beat you over the head with it. That doesn't answer my question about Elvis. Yeah, that would be good. If we don't have an Elvis impersonator, the entire wedding will be ruined. Don't tease me, because I will get that Elvis impersonator. Get him, she said, making a broad gesture. Please, because otherwise this would be absurd. The edge of hysteria in her voice suggested she felt it was already absurd, but he chose to take what she said as gospel, and he checked the box of a ridiculous paperwork requesting Elvis because she thought he was kidding. And she was going to learn very quickly that he was not a man to be trifled with, even when it came to things like this. They waited until their names were called, and sadly the only impersonator who was available past 10:30 on a Saturday night seemed to be Elvis from the mid-1970s. Do you want me to sing Burnin' Love or Can't Help Fallin' in Love at the end of the ceremony? He asked in all seriousness. Pick your favorite, Emerson replied, her face stony. And Holden knew that she had been certain that this level of farce would extinguish the thing that burned between them, because she hated him now, and he could see that the truth of that was in her eyes. But he was happy to accept her challenge, happy to stand there exchanging vows with an Elvis impersonator as an officiant and a woman in a feathered leotard as a witness, because it didn't change the fact that he wanted her. Desperately. Then all he could think about was when this was finished, he was going to take her up to that lavish suite and be with her. And she might not think that she wanted it, but she would. And she might not think she would burn with it all without anger, but she couldn't, and he knew it. He knew she was consumed by it. He should only feel rage, should only feel the need for revenge, but he didn't, and she shouldn't either. You may kiss the bride, Elvis said. She looked at him with a warning eye, but that warning quickly became a challenge. She would learn pretty quickly that he didn't back down from a challenge. He cupped her chin with his hand and kissed her. Hard and fast, but just light, quick brush of their mouths left them both breathing hard. And as soon as they separated, the music began to play Elvis and started singing about how he just couldn't help falling in love. Well, Holden sure as hell could help falling in love, but he couldn't keep himself from wanting Emerson, though it was a whole different situation. They signed the paperwork quickly. As soon as they were in the car and had been waiting for them, he handed her his phone. Call your lawyer. It's almost midnight, she said. He'll take a call from you. You know it. We need to get everything set into motion so we have it all signed by tomorrow morning. She will take a call from me, she said pointedly, but then she did as he asked. Hi, Julia, it's Emerson. I just got married. He could hear her voice saying indiscriminate words on the other end. Thank you. I need to make sure that I transfer the shares of the company into my husband's name as soon as possible. She looked over at him. Where are we staying? She recited all the necessary information back to Julia at his discretion, including the information about him before getting off the phone. She'll have everything faxed to us by morning. And she won't tip off your father? No, she said. She's the family lawyer, but she must know. She's going to realize that I eloped, and that she's going to realize that I'm trying to bypass my father, that I want my husband to have ownership of shares I is entitled to. She won't allow my father to interfere. She's a friend of yours, then. We became friends, yes. People who aren't liars make friends. I'm wounded. I didn't think you could possibly wound granite. Why would you comply with what I ask you to do so easily? Suddenly her voice sounded very small and tired. Because it makes no sense to come here to marry you if I don't follow through with the rest. You'll ruin my family if you don't get what you asked for. I'm giving it to you. Protesting now is like tying my own self to the railroad tracks, and the damsel in distress isn't my style. She looked at him. Her eyes were blue, certain, and I made my bed and I'll lie in it. They pulled up to the front of the glitzy casino hotel that was far from his taste in anything, but what he did like about Las Vegas was that lavish hotel rooms, exactly why a man was willing to pay a lot of money for a hotel room, and it involved elaborate showers, roomy bathrooms, and beds that could accommodate all manners of athletics. The decor didn't matter to him at all. With those other things taken into consideration, they got out of the car. He tipped the valet. Your secretary called ahead, Mr. McCall, the man said. You're all checked in, ready to go straight upstairs. A code has been texted to your phone. Holden put his arm around her, and the two of them began to walk to the elevator. I hope you don't think we're going to a hotel room, and Emerson said. Do you think that you're going to share a space with me tonight and keep your hands off me? They got inside the elevators, the doors closed. I hate you. And she shoved him at his chest. Okay. Moving forward. Page 308. By the time he and his new wife were back on the plane to Oregon, Emerson was looking sullen. "It's possible he'll know what happened by the time we get there," she said. "But you're confident there's nothing he can do to stop it?" She looked at him, prickles of irritation radiating off her, a sharp contrast to the willing woman who had been with him last night. "Why do you care? It works out for you either way." "True, but it doesn't work out particularly well for you." "And you care about that?" "I married you." "Yeah, I still really don't get that. What exactly do you think is going to happen now?" "We'll have a marriage. Why not? You told me that you didn't believe in marriage. I also told you I was a ranch hand. Have you been married before?" She frowned. "No. Would it matter if I had? In a practical sense, obvious nothing is a deal breaker since I'm already married to you for the winery, so no, but yes, actually it does." "Never been married, no kids." "Damn it," she said. "It didn't ever occur to me that you might have children." "Well, I don't, thank God. Do you want to have some?" The idea horrified him. But for some reason the image of Emerson being with his baby didn't horrify him at all. In fact, that side effect of bringing her into his plane pleased him in many ways he couldn't articulate. The idea of simply ruining James Maxfield had been risky, but there was every chance that no matter how hard Holden tried, there would be no serious blowback for the man who had harmed Holden's sister the way that he had. Wealthy men tended to be tougher targets than young women, particularly young women who traded on the image of their beauty. Not that Holden wasn't up to the task of trying to ruin the man. Holden was powerful in his own right, and he was ruthless with it. But there was something deeply satisfying about owning a piece of the enemy's legacy, and not only that, he got James' precious daughter in the bargain. This felt right. "I can't believe that you were suggesting we—" "You wanted children, right?" Yes. So it's not such an outrageous thought. You think that we're going to stay married?" "You didn't sign a prenup agreement, Emerson. You leave me, I still get half of your shares of the vineyard." "You didn't sign one either. I have half the impression of what's yours comes out an awful lot of money." "Money is just money. I'll make more. I don't have anything I care half as much about as you care about that vineyard, about the whole label." "Well, why don't we just discuss children until I decide how much I hate you?" "You hate me so much you climbed in bed with me for fun last night." "Yes, and that for the cold light of day seems less exciting than it did last night. The chemistry between us doesn't have anything to do with our marriage." "It has everything to do with it," he said, his tone far darker, more intenseful than he intended it to be. "What, you manufactured this chemistry so we could—" "No, this marriage made sense because of our chemistry. I was hardly going to let you walk away from me and marry another man, Emerson. Let him get his hands on you when he had all this time. He's had the last 2 years, and he did nothing. He didn't deserve you, and your father doesn't get to use you as a pawn. My father, he's not a good man. Whether you believe me or not, it's true. But I imagine that when we impart the happy news to him today, you can make that decision for yourself." "Thanks, but I don't need your permission to make my own decisions about my father or anything else." But the look on her face was something close to haunted, and if he were a man prone to guilt, he might feel it now. They landed not too long after. His truck was there, still where he left it. When they paused in front of it, she gave it a withering stare. "This thing is quite the performance." It was a pretty beat-up truck, but it was genuinely his. "It's mine," he said. "From when?" "Well, I got it when I was about 18, going on 15 years ago." "I don't even know how old you are. I mean, I do now, because I can do the math, but really I don't know anything about you, Holden." "Well, I'll happy to give you the rundown after we meet you with your father." "Well, looking forward to all that." She was still wearing the dress from last night. He had found a replacement shirt in the hotel shop before they left. It was too tight on his shoulders and not snug enough at the waist. When they arrived at the winery and entered the family estate together, he could only imagine the picture they made. Him in a part of a tux and her in her last night's gown. "Is my father in his study?" she questioned one of the members of the household staff who walked by. "Yes," the woman said, looking between Emerson and him. "Shall I see if he's receiving visitors?" "He doesn't really have a choice, Holden says. He'll take time to see us." He took Emerson's hand and led her through the house, their footsteps loud on the marble floors, and he realized as they approached the office what a pretentious show this whole place was. James Maxfield wasn't different from Holden, a man from humble beginnings hell-bent on forging a different path, but the difference between James and Holden was that Holden hadn't forgotten where he came from. He hadn't forgotten what it was to be powerless, and he would never make anyone else feel that kind of desperation. James seemed to enjoy his position and all the power that came with it. "You don't enjoy it? Is that why you're standing here getting ready to walk through that door with his daughter and make him squirm? Is that why you're forced Emerson to marry you?" He's thinking all this in his head. He pushed those thoughts aside and walked into the office without knocking, still holding tightly to Emerson. Her father looked up at him and then Emerson. "What the hell is this?" he asked. A hostile takeover, Holden said. You ruined my sister's life, and now I'm here to make yours very, very difficult. And only by your daughter's good grace am I leaving you with anything other than a smoldering pile of wreckage. Believe me when I say it's not for your sake, but the innocent people in your family who don't deserve to lose everything just because of your sins. Which sins are those? My sister, Sonia Jane. The silence in the room was palpable. Finally James spoke. What is it you intend to do? You need to guard your office better. I know you think this house is in a corporation, so you don't need high security, but you're such a damn narcissist you didn't realize you hired someone who was after the secrets that you kept in your own home. And now I have them. And thanks to Emerson, I now have a stake in the winery, too. You can contest the marriage and my ownership, but it won't end well for you. It might not be your first choice now, but I'm still willing to detonate everything if it suits me. James Maxfield's expression remained neutral, and his focus turned to his daughter. Emerson, her father said. You agreed to this? You are allowing him to blackmail us? What choice did I have? She asked, a thread of desperation in her voice. I trust you, Dad, I do, but he planned to destroy us, whether his accusations are true or not. That was his intent. He gave me no time, and he didn't give me a lot of options. This marriage was the only way I could salvage what we both built, because he was ready to wage a campaign against you, against our family, at any cost. He was going to come out as a personally and professionally. I couldn't take those chances. I couldn't. I did what I could do. I did what you would have done. I'm sure I did what I need doing. You were supposed to marry Donovan, James said. His tone was icy. I know, Emerson said, but what was I supposed to do when the situation changed? This man, have you been with him? Emerson drew back, clearly shocked that her father had asked her that question. I don't understand what that has to do with anything. It certainly compromises your purity of your claims, James returned. You say you've been blackmailed into this arrangement, but if you're in a relationship with him, did you sleep with his sister? She asked. All those other women in the files, did you? Or did you cheat on Mom? Emerson, those things you don't need to know about, and those things you don't understand. My relationship with your mother works, even if it's not traditional. You did. She lowered her voice to a near whisper. His sister, she's younger than me. Emerson. Holden took a step away from James' desk. Men like you always think it won't come back on you. You think you can take advantage of women who are young, who are desperate. No one will come for you, but I am here for you. This empire of yours, it serves me now. Your daughter, she's mine too. And if you push me, I swear I will see it all ruined, and everyone will know what you are. How many people do you think will come here for a wedding or parties then? What kind of brand worldwide? Who wants to think about sexual harassment, coercion, and destruction of a young woman enough to be your daughter when they have a sip of your Merlot? Silence fell, tense and hard between them. The brand is everything, James said finally. I've done everything I can to foster that family brand, as has your mother. What we do in private is between us. And the gag order you had my sister sign and all those other women, Sonia had just been institutionalized because of all this, because of the fallout, and she might have signed papers, but I did not, and now I don't need to tell the world about your transgressions to have control over what you built, and believe me, in the years to come I will make your life a living hell. Holden leaned forward, placing his palms on the desk. Emerson was your pawn. You were going to use her as a wife to the man. You wanted her as a part of this empire, but Emerson is with me now. She's no longer yours. Emerson is right here, Emerson said, her voice vibrating with emotion, and frankly, I'm disgusted by the both of you. I don't belong to either of you, and Dad, I did what I had to do to save the vineyard. I did because I trusted you. I trusted that Holden's accusations were false, but you did all of this, didn't you? It was an affair, James said. It looks to me like you're having one of those of your own, so it's a bit rich for you to stand in judgment of me. I had not made vows to Donovan, and I never claimed to love him. He also knows. Your mother also knows, James said. The terms of this marriage are not things you discuss with your children. You clearly have the same view of relationships that I do, and yet here you are lecturing me. It's not the same, she said, and as for you, she said, turning to Holden, I married you because it was the lesser of two evils, but that doesn't make me yours. You lied to me. You made me believe that you were someone you weren't. You're no different from him. Emerson stormed out of the room and left Holden standing there with James. She makes your victory ring hollow, James said. Even if she divorces me, part of the winery is still mine. We didn't have a prenuptial agreement drafted between us, something I'm sure you were intending to take care of when she married that soft boy from the East Coast. What exactly are you going to do now? I haven't decided yet, and the beauty of all this, I have time. You can consider me the sword of Damocles hanging over your head, and one day You know that thread will break, and the question is when. And what do you intend to do to Emerson? I've done it already. She's married to me. She's mine. Those words burned with conviction, no matter her protest before storming out, and he didn't know why. He felt those truth of those words deeper than anything else. He had married her. It was done as far as he was concerned. He went out of the office and saw Emerson standing there, her hands planted firmly on the balustrade overlooking the entry below. "Let's talk," he said. She turned to face him. "I don't want to talk. You should go talk with my father some more. The two of you seem to be enjoying that dialogue." "Enjoy is a strong word. You betrayed me," she said. "I don't know you, Emerson. You don't know me. We hadn't ever made promises to each other. I didn't betray you. Your father betrayed you." She looked stricken by that, and she said nothing. "I want you to come live with me. And why would I do that?" "Because we're married. Because it's not fake." "Does that mean you love me?" she asked, her tone scathing. "No, but there's a lot of mileage between love and fake, and you know it. I live here. I work here. I can't leave. Handily, I bought a property adjacent to the mountain. You won't have to leave. I do have another ranch in Jackson Creek, and I like to visit there from time to time. I do a bit of traveling, but there's no reason we can't be based here in Gold Valley. You'll have to forgive me. I'm not understanding the part of your maniacal plan where we try to pretend to be a happy family. The vineyard is more yours now than it was before. I have no issue deferring to you on a great many things. You're not just going to let it get run into the ground? If I wanted to do that, I wouldn't have to own a piece. I own a part of your father's legacy, and that appeases me. So," he concluded, "shall we go?" Emerson looked around at the marble halls of the Maxfield estate, and then for the very first time in all her life she didn't feel like it was home. The man in the office behind her was a stranger. The man in front of her was her husband, whether or not he was a stranger. And his words kept echoing over in her head. "I didn't betray you. Your father betrayed you." "Let's go," she said before she could think about the words through. She found herself bundled back up into his truck, still wearing the dress that she'd been wearing at yesterday's party. His house was a quick drive away from the estate, a modern feat of design built from the hillside, all windows to make the most of the view. "Tell me about your sister," she said, standing in the drive with him. Feeling decidedly flat, more than a bit defeated. "She's my half-sister," Holden said. Taking long strides towards the front entry, he entered a code, opened the door, and ushered her into the fully furnished living area. "I had everything taken care of already," he said. "It's ready for us." Ready for us. She didn't know why she found that comforting. She shouldn't. She was unaccountably wounded by his betrayal, and had been forced into this marriage, and yet she wanted him, and she couldn't explain it. And her old life didn't feel right anymore, because it was even more of a lie than this one. "My mother never had much luck with love," Holden said. His voice was rough. "I had to take care of her because the men she was with didn't. They would either abuse her outright or manipulate her, and she wasn't very strong. Sonia came along when I was 8. About the cutest thing I ever seen. A hell of a lot of trouble. I had to get her ready and make sure her hair was brushed for school, all that, but I did it. I worked and I took care of them, and once I got money I made sure that they had whatever they wanted." He looked away from her. A muscle was jumping in his jaw. "It was after Sonia had money that she met your father. I don't think it takes a genius to realize she got daddy issues. And he played each and every one of them. She got pregnant. He tried to get her to terminate. She wouldn't. She lost the baby anyway. Then lost her mind right along with it." Hearing those words again, now knowing that they were true, they hit her differently. She sat down on the couch. Her stomach was cramping with horror. "You must love her a lot," she said, "to do all of this for her." She thought about her father and how willing she was going to be to marry a stranger for him, and then how she had married Holden to protect the winery, to protect her family, her father, and now she wasn't entirely convinced she shouldn't have just let Holden do whatever he wanted. He frowned. "I did what I had to be done, like I always do. I take care of them." "Because you love them," she said. "Because no one else takes care of them." He shook his head. "My family wasn't loving. They still aren't. My mother is one of the most cantankerous people on the face of this planet. But you do what you do. You keep people going. When you're a responsibility, there's no other choice." "Oh," she said. She took a deep, shuddering breath. "You see, I love my father. I love my mother. That's why her disapproval hurts. That's why his betrayal. I didn't know what he was like that he could have done those things to someone like your sister. It hurts me to know that. You're right, he is one of the who betrayed me, and I will never be able to go back into that estate again and look at him the same way. I'll never be able to look at him the same. It's all just broken, and I don't think it will ever be put back together." "We'll see," he said. "I never came here to put anything back together because I knew it was all broken to beyond fixing of it. I came here to break him because he broke Sonia. And I don't think she's going to be fixed either. He came to stand in front of Emerson, his hands shoved into his pockets. His expression was grim. And I'm sorry that you're caught up in the middle of all this, because I don't have any stake in breaking you, but here's what I know about broken things. They can't be put back together exactly as they were. I think you can make something new out of them, though. Are you giving me life advice, really? The man who blackmailed me into marriage. He was still no absurdly beautiful, so ridiculously gorgeous and compelling to her. It was wrong, but she didn't know how to fix it, how to change it, like anything else in her life. And really, at the right moment, it was the only one of the deepest messed up things in her reality. That she felt bonded to him, even as those bonds connected to her family were shattered. You can take it or not, he said. That doesn't change the fact that it's true. Whether or not I exposed him, your father's a predator. This is who he is. You could have lived your life without knowing the truth, but I don't see how that's comforting. It wasn't. It just made her shiver race down her spine, made her feel cold all over. I trusted him. I trusted him so much that I was willing to marry a man he chose for me. I would have done anything he asked me to do. He built a life for me, and he gave me wonderful childhood, and he made me the woman that I am, for better, for worse. He did a whole host of wonderful things for me, and I don't know how to reconcile with what else I know about him now. All I know is your father is a fool, because the way you believe him. I've never believed in anyone that way, anyone or anything. And the way my sister believed in him, he didn't deserve that from either of you. And if just one person believed in me the way that either of you believed in him, the way that I think your mother believes in him, your sisters, I wouldn't have done anything to mess that up. Something quiet and sad bloomed inside her, and yet she felt the sadness, wasn't losing her faith in her father, not even a little. I did, she said. What? I did. Believe in you like that. Holden Brown, that ranch hand I met not so long ago. I don't know what you think about me or women like me, but it mattered to me that when I was with you, that I let you into my bed. I've only been with 2 other men. For me, Boom Boom is an intimate thing, and I've never shared it with someone outside a relationship. But there was something about you. I trusted you. I believed in you. You told me about who you were, and I believed in what my body told about what was between us. And now what we shared has kind of turned into a weird and awful thing. And I don't think I'll ever trust myself again between my father and you. I didn't lie to you. His voice was almost furious in its harshness. Not about wanting you. Nothing that happened between you and me in a bed was a lie. Not last night, not the first night, I swear to you. I did not seduce you to get revenge on your father. Quite the opposite. I told you that when I came here that I would never touch you. You were forbidden to me, Emerson, because I didn't want to do the same thing your father had done. Because I didn't want to lie to you or take advantage of you in any way. When I first met you in the vineyard, I told myself that I was disgusted by you, because you had his blood in your veins. But no matter how much I told myself that, I couldn't make it true. You were not your father, and that's how I feel. The thing between us is separate and real. But the marriage is for revenge. Yes, but I wouldn't have taken that wedding night if I didn't want you. Can I believe in you? She didn't know where that question came from, all vulnerable and sad, and she wasn't entirely sure that she liked the fact that she asked it, but she needed to grab onto something in this world where nothing made sense. In that moment, she felt like rootless, because not even her father, she was the one who she thought he was, and she didn't know how she was going to face that conversation with Wren or Cricket, didn't know what she was going to say to her mother, because no matter how difficult their own relationship was, this gave Emerson intense sympathy for her mother. Not to mention the sympathy for the young woman her father had harmed, and the other women who were like her. How many were just been like Sonia? It made Emerson want to wonder. She had no solid ground to stand on. She was desperate to find the purchase. If Holden was telling the truth, if the chemistry between them was real to him as it was to her, then she could believe that, if nothing else, she needed to believe in it desperately. If I go in on this marriage, Holden, on this thing between us, if we work together to make this vineyard ours, Wren and Cricket included, promise me that you'll be honest with me, that you will be faithful to me, because right now I pledge myself to you, because I don't know what the hell else to believe in. I'm angry with you, but if you're telling me the truth about wanting me, and you also told me the truth about my father, then you are the most real and honest thing in my life right now, and I'll bet on that. But only if you promise me right now, and you won't lie to me. I promise, he said. His eyes were like 2 chips of obsidian, dark and fathomless hard. And in her world that had proven to be built on shifting and sand foundation, his hardness was something steady, something real, and she needed something real. Okay. I'm trying to look ahead here and see if we can have a stopping point for the night. We might have to make that our stopping point on reading, because I just looked at the time. We've made great progress. We've got halfway through the book, so that's really good. One more video tonight, and then that's it.